Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all to Norte, all of you who are watching us through YouTube. It's a real pleasure to have you here in this panel discussion entitled Conducting Remote Assessment in Times of Disruption. My name is Erika Ferrer, and I am the coordinator of the MA in TESOL program here at Universidad del Norte. Today, our panelists, my colleagues, Dr. Diego Boada and Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez. We are going to be discussing here today assessments, especially in these strange times. We are teachers talking to teachers, and at these times having these communities is something really important, this support from the teachers community. We have decided to make assessment the center of our discussion today, considering as John Cowan argues that assessment is the engine which drives students' learning. Assessment is central to curricular processes and is central to our own teaching practices. Having effective assessments in place guarantees most of the time that our curricular and teaching processes are also effective. Everything from outcomes, content, material, instructions, methodologies, all of these aspects of our teaching practices can be informed by the information that assessment provides. Assessment has always been a challenge. Creating effective assessment is always poses some challenges, and especially in these times of emergency remote teaching is when we most need to take a look at it very, very carefully. That challenge is even greater now. So all of us teachers have to work together on this new area and explore ways to assess students that best suits our own contexts, because our own contexts are very important at the moment of assessing. Therefore, if I may see the first slide, please. So the agenda for today, I
just want to make sure that you can see the slide. Does it look right?
Yes, we can see it perfectly. Okay. Can we go next, please? So as I was saying, these are our panelists, and conducting remote assessment in terms of disruption is the topic we're dealing with today. Next, please. So the agenda for today consists of a brief presentation by our panelists. Diego is going to talk about how flexible should assessment be, and then Rodrigo will follow with practicality, a key concept to keep assessment working in students, and our favors in times of disruption. At the time the panelists are giving their presentations, I would like to get from the audience the questions or comments that you may have about the topic, questions that you would like us to address during this space, and you can type your questions in the chat. I will be taking notes and then passing them on to our panelists. Then we will have a Q&A session where we're going to discuss your questions, and we're going to finalize with final remarks and conclusions. Next, please. So let's begin with Professor Diego Boada. Professor Boada holds a Bachelor in Education in Spanish and Foreign Languages at Universidad Pedagógica Nacional. He holds a Master's in Education, Learning Design and Technology, University of Georgia, USA. He's a Fulbright, he got a Fulbright scholarship, Sal Darriaga Concha. He holds a PhD in Learning Design and Technology, also from the University of Georgia, and as well as a postdoctorate in pedagogy for culturally and linguistically diverse students. Diego, welcome.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you for such an introduction. It was beautiful, everything you said. Erica, I have to say, she's the best program coordinator, master coordinator that anyone can have. I love Erica. And
Thank you.
this is me, I'm Diego. You know, like now we are teachers, we're YouTubers. So, like, I want to, before I start, I want to say hello to everybody who is here. We have 33 attendees, and hopefully, many more people are watching us on YouTube. You know, we have no choice but to become YouTubers now. So so we are going to be doing some things in English, some things in Spanish. So we are thinking that we're going to have different audiences today. This is mostly for prospective students in our master's program, and so our master's program is fully in English, and so that's why this talk is going to be in English. And so I'm going to start by introducing you to my friend and colleague, Dr. Lidia Cabrera. I've had the pleasure to work with her. We've published something together. She is currently the Vicerrectora de Proyección, Internacionalización y Cooperación. I will translate that as like the Vice President of Projection, Internationalization, and Cooperation at the Universidad de La Laguna in Spain. This is actually not in Spain. I mean, it is in Spain, but it is in the Canary Islands. And so the Canary Islands are actually, I've never been. Hopefully, I will go visit her sometime soon, but it is closer to Africa than it is to Europe. And their Spanish is very interesting because they speak more like us. They don't have the teteo. That is common in Spain, but they have like a different kind of accent, and it's a very interesting story. Anyway, that is too much information. She shared this quote or this this quote, Dr. Cabrera, on social media. She says, "Me preocupa que los estudiantes aprendan a trabajar en un mundo global, cambiante y diverso, no si se copian los exámenes." So I will translate that into like, I worry that students learn how to work in a global world, a global that is constantly changing, and a world that is diverse. I do not worry, I do not care if they cheat on the exams. So I want to here ask our audience, do you agree with Dr. Cabrera, yes or no? And there isn't like a right or wrong answer. You know, it could be, you know, I am in between, I have to say, and I've changed my mind. So I just want to know what you guys think, if you agree or not, because I want to have this conversation. And so Gustavo is helping me with this poll. Do you agree with Dr. Cabrera? You have like 30 seconds to say yes or no. Are we getting responses, Gustavo? Is it working? Oh, okay. Yay, we got the response. This is a new tool for me. I am not very used to using GoToMeeting. And so 78% of people said yes, they agree. 22% of people said no, they don't agree. I would love to hear maybe somebody that said no. Is that possible, Gustavo? ¿Podemos prender el micrófono a alguien que diga no, que no? ¿Y por qué? I would like to have just one person, like very brief introduction to somebody who said no.
Las personas del público pueden levantar la mano y les podemos habilitar el micrófono si lo desean.
Just one person. Alguien que dijo no. Just one person.
Okay.
Estamos haciendo Spanglish. So it's a little bit of English, mostly English, but a little bit of Spanish. ¿Algún voluntario? Like when I am teaching undergraduates, it's like, hello, whoa, whoa. Like nobody wants to talk in class. The struggle is real. Nobody? No hay voluntarios? I guess they're shy. Okay, no hay voluntarios. Seguimos entonces. Okay, I'm gonna share my slides. Let me see if you can see the slides. So, okay, I said let's unpack this. So, what do you guys think? I really like Dr. Cabrera. She's really smart. She's a great person. And I was like, you know what? She is right. I don't really care if they're cheating, because if they are cheating, they're cheating themselves. They're not cheating on the teacher. It's their problem. My job as a teacher is to teach them, to help them become a better person, to really help them and encourage them and enable them to do bigger, bigger things, right? But then I was having a conversation with a different colleague, and then she said, this is complicated because, you know, Uninorte is quality. Like here at Uninorte, we are very proud to say that we have the best and our students are the best. And so we have to make sure that they are the best. And so if a student is constantly cheating, you know, and they graduate and they cheat and they cheat and they cheat and they never study, then what's going to happen? That when they graduate, they are engineers, they're doctors, they are like professional people, and they represent the university. They represent Uninorte. And so we want to make sure that they make us proud. You know, we don't want to, you know, like have students that maybe are not capable. Like I'm sure, like if you need to go to a doctor, like a medical doctor, you want the best doctor. You want a doctor that you can trust. You want a medical doctor that can do a good job. And so my question is, yes, assessment has to be flexible, but how flexible, you know? And this is why Rodrigo Rodriguez, I'm sorry, he's going to talk more about assessment and more like about like the theory behind the things like reliability, practicality, and he has like the heavy part of the talk. I am just like the introduction, really. And I just want to talk about one single thing, and this is universal design for learning. This is something that I've discussed before, and it's the idea that we are, as teachers, we are designers. We are designers of learning experiences, and we want to make a good design. We want a design that works for everybody. That is not to say that there is, you know, like one single way for everybody, because we are all different. We have to differentiate. But you know, there is design, like in this case with the stairs and things like that, that are ways that you can design or accommodate for different types of people or different types of students with different needs. And so there are different things about UDL or Universal Design for Learning. The biggest thing is the last column is the how of learning. That means how can our students show that they learn? How can students demonstrate that they are learning? And sometimes we are used to like it's just one way, like as teachers, this is the exam, you have to do exactly what I'm telling you, and there is no other way. But our students have different talents, you know, maybe some of them like singing, some of them like poetry, some of them like writing, some of them have really wonderful skills with video editing. And so at the end of the day, the important thing is, what am I teaching them? Number one. Number two, what am I assessing? And number three, how can they demonstrate that? So we can give them choice. It doesn't have to be one way, one size fits all approach. But then that is the question, and I don't have answers. I keep saying I keep saying this over and over again. I have no answers, but I have questions. So my question for Rodrigo, Dr. Rodriguez, is how can we make this happen, Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez? How can we make sure that we are flexible but not too flexible to really, you know, like assess what we're supposed to assess? And on that note, I'm going to give the mic to Dr. Rodriguez.
So let me, Diego, first introduce Diego, since I haven't introduced Rodrigo, since I didn't do it at the beginning of the session. So thank you, Diego. Now let's continue with the answer from Rodrigo's, or the discussion from Rodrigo's part. Rodrigo is a professor at Universidad del Norte. He holds a BA in Spanish and English from Universidad Popular del Cesar. He also holds a master's degree in education from Universidad del Norte, a PhD in second language studies from Purdue University. He's an assistant professor of the Department of Foreign Languages at Universidad del Norte in Barranquilla, Colombia. And his current research interests include language testing and assessment, EFL pedagogy, teacher training, and corpus linguistics. So welcome, Rodrigo. You can answer now Diego's question.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Diego.
Well, he will answer during the talk. I know you have an activity. I didn't mean to derail you. So he's super interactive. He's like wonderful professor, and so he prepared this. So, you know, never mind. You can answer the question later. Go ahead, Rodrigo.
Thank you. So before we get into the talk and the answer to the question, which I'm not sure that I have, I know we can like talk about it though. So we can, if for those people who have their telephone at hand, you can go to menti.com and just, you can do it in your computer or in your cell phone, your browser. Go to menti.com and enter that code that is 484742. And then let's see in these times of lockdown what you people are having. I see many people having water, which is kind of cool. Ooh, okay, soda, nice. Am I the only person with a tea? That's interesting. Colombia, we don't have tea after lunch, do we? Okay, I know. Anybody else? Let's take 20 more seconds to see how many people we have. Ooh, coffee. So water is the winner for today, huh? So I wanted to start this discussion with this kind of activity because I want you to see that one of the ways that we can assess the mood in a room, for example, like we are having now, is by asking this type of questions and see where people is. Depending on whatever we are going to do in the presentation, we could have something like, what am I going to do with this information? Maybe I'm going to talk about water and the benefits of water, or maybe I want to talk about why so few people have tea at this time of the day. And, we can just look, but this is like a great way to do something called diagnostic assessment. So you have the diagnosis of your class, you see what the mood is in the room, and then you can move forward, okay? That's kind of interesting. So I'm gonna move on to the next slide. Thank you for your participation. And let's see what motivates you to attend this webinar. You can type, one line, just one line because again, I'm trying to see what kind of expectations, what motivated you to come here, which is the topic.
You're so
okay,
fancy,
the title.
Rodrigo. You're so fancy. Like, you see, we have quality at Norte. Okay, Rodrigo. So, like, yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we have learn new strategies. That's interesting. Improve my skills in the area of the title. So many people are really focusing the title of the presentation. Well, to learn, awesome. To know about RA. I'm not sure what RA means in this context.
Research assistants, maybe? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's the first thing that came to my mind also. Okay,
What is
so
RA?
we
I don't know. Maybe they can tell us in the chat.
It is pertinent in the context we are now. New strategies. Ooh, so we have a few here to know about new trends and alternatives to apply. Okay, strategies. So I have many people focus in the checking some alternate views of assessments. Okay, I think we can work on that. And we have few. Nice, this is like great participation that we are having here. Thank you. I'm interested in learning ways to assess students to actually, give me a second.
Can I interrupt here for a minute?
To know if they are learning. Okay. Yeah,
You
go
see,
ahead, Diego.
when I said the mic, nobody wanted to say anything on the mic. But now that Rodrigo did this, we have a lot of answers. So I learned that maybe students don't want to use the mic, but they are okay typing and chatting. So thank you, Dr. Rodriguez.
Yes, this is interesting how
clearly many of the people in the audience were drawn by the topic. The topic is something that comes up
good
a lot.
Yes. Assessment is neglected from instruction. I agree with that. Thank you very much to all the people who participated. So I'm going to move to the next and last slide before I move on, because again, I'm getting to know you. You are the audience, so I kind of want to know what the feeling is. So in one word, just one word, describe your experience with assessment during the quarantine. If you could choose only one concept to describe how things have worked for you in these times, during this almost, I think we have had 8 weeks so far, right? I don't know about you guys, but wow, challenging, frustrating, Oh, somebody has been innovative. That's nice. Unfair, invalid, exhausting. I feel you. Unreliable, extenuating, so challenging. So the bigger the word, the more people said it. The most popular word so far is challenging. That's interesting. Anybody else? So I think that we are going to move really smoothly to the next slide, because I see the words here, defiant. I see the word here, unreliable and unfair and invalid. So those are actually opposite concepts to some of the concepts that I have for you that we are going to talk about today. Okay, so thank you very much. Time consuming, definitely. So now we're going to move on to the presentation, please. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to move back to the presentation mode.
Okay, 1 second.
Thank you very much.
Technology is difficult for everybody. Okay, even for me. Okay, I think, let me know. Can you see the slides now?
I can. Thank you.
Okay.
So can you move to the next one? Yeah. So of so many things that we could talk about today, obviously we don't have time, and we need and even in a whole course of assessment and testing, we still have many things that we are not going to master completely. I decided to focus on practicality, which is one of the many concepts that we have to take into account when we are designing assessments. But in these times, in what is happening right now in the world, in all the crisis and the lockdown and the few moments that we have to prepare our assessment techniques, I think that we have to bear in mind, and according to some discussions that I have with some colleagues, they have told me that sometimes they bite, or they want to bite more than what they can chew. So I think that this is a great opportunity to remind you that if we think about practical concepts or practicality concepts, we can make assessment work for our students and obviously for us. So next. So I was so glad to see that in the keywords that people just sent in the participation window that we opened, that some people talked about fairness, more like unfairness. Some people talk about invalidity, sorry. Some people talk about unreliable, and some people talked about unfair, which is another thing that it's not there, but it's one of the key concepts that we need to think about. So all these concepts, when we are designing an assessment task or a test or an exam, as you name it, we need to think about all this, and these parts are constantly interacting. So go to the next one. And fairness, for example, has to do with washback, but also interacts with authenticity, and we have to be fair to interpret the results. And go to the next one, please. And then we find that fair authenticity obviously has to do with the interpretability of the scores. If our task is authentic, we need to know how to interpret it at the end of the day, or if it's just being an artificial task, whatever that means, we can go back to it. Go to the next one. And flexibility, as Diego said at some point, we need to think about that in terms of how practical it is. And this is kind of the beginning of everything for us in these days, right? Go to the next one, please. Practicality and reliability. And go to the next one. And I don't want to make this story long anymore. Everything interacts with everything. And when you make a change in terms of fairness, you have to think about how it affects your practicality, and your practicality, your validity, and your validity, your reliability with the objectivity, and everything goes hand in hand. So the fact that I'm talking about one concept doesn't mean that this is like the only thing that you can change. If you change one thing, all the rest of these factors are going to have some sort of change, okay? So let's move on to the next slide. So I just want to give you a few reminders. based on what you just said, I'm glad to see that one of the reasons that we have problems is that lately I have had conversations with many colleagues and they ask me about assessment, but just like the first part of the conversation goes to make sure that they understand that assessment is not necessarily testing. Testing is one way to assess, and there are different types of tests. But in these times, I think for our own mental well-being, it's better to focus on assessment tasks. Okay, and test responds to many assumptions that we used to take for granted in the classroom, like the control that we had, that the students did not have any help, that they studied beforehand, that they had some build-up towards that test. But right now, we don't have any of that. So it's better if we move on from that concept while we are in this situation. We need to be smart about the amount of work we are committed to engage in. So as a test, it's easy because it's already made. We think that it's easy to get that information from the students. We may find that it is not necessarily true. The type of, I don't know what type of students you have, but we have to think that just the fact that if we send the same type of evaluations that they had in the classroom, we just translate it to another context, it's going to be tainted. Depending if they have a friend who can help them online, if they have a relative who can help them in-house or online, depending if they use translators or dictionaries or anything that we never thought that they could use during that task when we designed it originally. So maybe we may want to redesign some tasks, but also be careful not to spend all day designing or all weekend designing one task, okay? And think about what is gonna be the give and take from it, okay? So if you're going to design a task, how much time you're going to spend in it, how much students are going to spend on it, and how much information I'm going to get from that task. And in classroom assessment must be embedded in learning. And I'm so glad that one of the people who participated brought that up, that classroom assessment is not an add-on or an independent part of our learning experience. It has to be part of it. And if you don't have it as such, shall this be a great opportunity for you to get into it and to start to think in assessment as a part of your class plan. It's not like class, 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 and then assessment. It has to be class, assessment, class, assessment, class, assessment. And this, when this is engraved in the student's mind, you are gonna get the best results from them and the best results for you because you're gonna have multiple checkpoints during the semester. Now the task, the assessment, again, doesn't have to be a test, a question. It could be so many other different stuff. Next. So what do I do? So remote learning has different dynamics. One thing that I also recommend is do not for instruments designed for other type of settings. So if you have some type of work that you had for the classroom and you see that it's a long stretch to make it work in the remote learning situation, just don't do it. Try to look for another type of task. We could encourage engagement in learning through assessment. And one of my favorite, I think there are 3 words that we can live by here. Number 1 is authenticity in the type of task that they do. In that way, every student is going to find that learning is something that they can do, they can use for whatever purpose or whatever function you are doing in the class. The second thing that I would like to remind you is that you need to personalize learning. When you personalize learning, you include your students' opinions, you include your students' preferences, you include your students' reaction to something that they saw. That's gonna be the name of the game here because we want to make sure that no response is similar to the other one. And again, we can focus in the language aspects, and every topic that we use in the language class, shall it be content language learning or EMI or something like that, that's an excuse for students to use language, right? And even if you teach, I don't know if you teach content in English like geography or biology or something like that, you have to keep in mind that this is the kind of things that students are going to look for, right? So another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and if we have time, we can talk about those at the end, are classroom assessment techniques, CATs. So if you don't know that concept, or if you need to refresh it a little, I think this is gonna be a great introduction to you to CATs. And we could have a semester-long talk about CATs, but these are tasks that help you to assess your students at different stages, okay? And again, as I told you, we can dive in on those later if we have time. But again, 3 concepts lead the way: personalization of learning and assessment, diversification of things. So you need to diversify, okay? Don't try that all students give you the same answer, but I mean, you're not going to give them 20 different tasks if you have 20 students in your class. Just give them the same task, but make sure that every student gives you a different response. At some point, one of these examples came to the university recently when we had students needed to compare and contrast, write texts, you know, argumentative text, and they had to compare and contrast and see how they could. So the teacher decided to ask the student to compare the reaction to, or how the country as a whole had reacted to the pandemic, to COVID-19. So they had to compare Colombia to another country. So every student compared Colombia to a different country. So student number 1 in the list compared Colombia to Mexico. Student number 2 compared Colombia to Philippines. Student number 3 compared Colombia to China. Student number 4 compared Colombia to United States. So it's the same task, but every student is giving you a different answer. Now, the first question that I had when I suggested it was like, but do we need to know everything about the COVID in all these countries? No, you don't. You're a language instructor, and students are using language for you. So even if the student is not so rigorous in the information that he gives, he says like, I don't know, United States is testing 20,000 people a day, and they are actually testing 10,000 people a day. Does it really matter for the language purposes that we have in the class? I think it doesn't. So we have to really never lose the focus, and that is part of the practicality that I'm talking about. Be practical. Don't try to go and find 20 different sources and do something like that. What we are going to give them is a list of resources or websites that they can go and get reliable information from. But I'm sure that when you read those things, you're going to learn a lot about the theme too, but students are going to be using language. And no student is going to be able to cheat or copy from other students, because each student has a different topic or a different theme, but they have the same task. Okay? And all this relies on universal and well-known principles of teaching and learning, constructivism, and you know, everything that we are taught in pedagogy in the undergrad degree. Okay? Let's move on. And this is a definition that I want to leave it to you. It refers to the degree to which the implementation of a language assessment can be guaranteed by the human, material, and financial resources. So if you don't have, I don't know, access to paid platforms, don't try to make them work too hard. If you're a school but if your school has access to certain platforms, use them. Now, if you don't have money for students, like if you don't have students with computers, if you work in a public school and students barely, or they have one smartphone by family, you can have students to use their smartphone. So think about how things are going to work, because even if you say, oh, you need to use the computer and they don't have it, that is going to be unpractical for you, because you will have to design a different assessment for that student. So instead of designing one task, you will have to design 2. And that's my goal here, just to remind you that sometimes you don't have all the resources that you need, and you have to accommodate to that, okay? Think about the amount of time that students are going to spend doing that. Just don't think in the type of outcome, but think of how many minutes or hours students are going to be sitting doing that task, including the research and all that they need. Okay, so think about that and put that in the blender and then come up with a task. Okay. When compromises have to be made to achieve practicality, priority should be given to fulfilling the original purpose. So think about the purpose of language. Don't think about like that students know more about X and Y or something like that. Sometimes in this situation, especially, we'd have to pick and choose. And if we began the year, I don't know, with 10 language objectives, due to the pandemic situation, we have to reduce that to 5. That is totally fine. You don't have to feel bad about it. You just have to talk to your coordinator and to, the principal and the staff in the school that how things are going to play out, but that's fine also. Okay, so don't bite more than you can chew, because if you try to achieve everything and to write many exams as you used to, things are not going to go well. My last recommendation in these times is that you start designing the tasks with a lot of time. So instead of giving the exam in 1 week or in one class, I don't think it's a practical idea, start giving them tasks per week. And each of those tasks, I don't know if there are going to be 3, 5, 10, all those are going to build up what you think about the test. Okay, but they are not going to be a real test. They are going to be like activities of listening, activities of writing, activities of this, and all of them are going to be personalized. So each student is going to choose something different, and hopefully they will be able to complete it individually. And it's okay if they use some help from their family, but we know that they are learning, because this is the thing, they are language learners. Okay, now next, please. So this is a CAT, this is a classroom assessment technique. And at the end of all my seminars or conferences, I give this out to the audience. And this CAT is called 3, 2, 1. And you can fill this with whatever you want, okay? So I decided to put it 3 things that I take with me from the webinar. And this is for you, obviously. You write the 3 things that you take from this webinar. And then you write 2 questions, 2 concepts, or 2 things that I said during this presentation that you think that you are going to go online and research, or that you're going to read further, or that you're going to talk to your friends, okay? And then I always act from 1 recommendation for the presenter, or the presenters in this case, okay? So, and this is the way that I assess my presentation, okay? And this is something that keeps you acquainted for what you saw in the presentation. So when you go home, you check, or where you are home now. So when the presentation is over, you check and you go back to these concepts in case that you maybe can forget them later. But also it gives me the last part. I usually cut it and take it for me, and I take recommendations from you, and then I try to improve for my next. So again, this is just 1 CAT. There are like 50 type of classroom assessment techniques that you can think. And my recommendation also is that you think how this particular, you can use it at the end of the class, of your language class, and how you can use it with your students. Like 3 irregular verbs that I learned during this class, I don't know. 2 irregular verbs that I don't know the past of. And 1 verb that I thought that I did not know, but I actually knew. I don't know, you can do whatever you want here. So this is just like a template that you can edit any way you want. And there are many of these classroom assessment techniques for you to choose from, and they are already made. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just go back to them, get them, and adapt them to your context and the current situation of your classroom, okay? I think I'm done. I think that was my time. Most of the things now are going to be your questions. So we decided, Diego, Eric, and I decided that instead of like talking a lot, we kind of wanted to give you some, to try to solve your questions, just to have a conversation with you about how things are going. Thank you.
So thank you to both of our panelists.
Can I make a little comment here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I I know we have questions and it is 2:45, so we have 15 minutes. While you get the questions ready, I just want to say that Rodrigo is wonderful. Dr. Rodriguez, I learned so much from the talk because, like I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And, you're an expert in assessment and I respect you for that. I have a question for you. That's something that it was not clear to me about washback. I've never heard that before and I don't know what that means. But it was so wonderful and something that the audience needs to know. I want to share a little bit of personal information. Two things is that Rodrigo is wonderful, and in addition to being a great professor, he's also a photographer. And so I told Rodrigo, your PowerPoint slides are so wonderful. Like they're making my slides look ugly because they look so professional and the graphic design is perfect. I said that. And last night we had a phone conversation, and Rodrigo he's one of my best friends. And he's one of the reasons, quite honestly, why I came to Uninorte, because I started looking for jobs 1 year before coming to Colombia because I was in the United States, and Rodrigo has been the best person. And so I really want to thank you here for everybody to hear. You're so wonderful, and it is a pleasure for me to work with you and to work with Erika as well, and to work with everybody on Norte because we have the best team, and I'm so proud to be on Norte. And I feel like we have something special, and I want to share this with everybody. And so please just come study with us. I'm not getting paid to say this. This is just me saying this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego, for your
Washback.
words.
Actually, the term washback refers to what we do with the information that we get from the assessments to modify the assessment itself. So if we get for example, we can get all the tasks that we got were incomplete. So maybe the students need more time. We gave them 20 minutes to complete the task and all the tasks were incomplete. Then next time we try with 30 minutes. So that's washback, is how the results of the test help us to improve the items in the test itself.
I'm taking notes. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez.
I have a question. I also want to thank the participation of the audience. We have very interesting questions here. So the first one says, how to apply formative assessment in remote teaching?
Oh, well, this is one of the, I think this is one of the most suitable situations to use formative assessment. The thing is, with formative assessment, we have to think about the task that we are doing. So to give you a practical example of how we can use it is that let's think about a writing piece that our students write. Let's say a paragraph. I'm not thinking about like a whole essay. Just focus in whatever topics that we are working, and students write a paragraph and we provide them feedback. The students go back, correct that paper, correct that paragraph, and then they write a new paragraph. And then we give them feedback on that. Obviously, that is how much time do we have to do that? It doesn't have to be the next day. We have to plan that long term. And that can be a paper that could take 2 months to complete, one paper. But we are giving them feedback constantly, every week. So my students, that's something that I'm doing with them. They wrote a paper and then I gave them feedback. I was really detailed, especially with the goals that I had with them. So I told them you need to include, I don't know, your bibliography, which you didn't, and you have to make sure to do this and that. And then I gave them the paper, and now they rewrote the paper and I gave them another task. So at that time, I was focused in summarizing. For example, that was one of the things that I was working. So students rewrote that paper. They improved the summaries, but now, 2 months later, the focus of the class was in sentence types. So they rewrote that paper and they highlighted every sentence according to the type of sentence that they wrote. So it was complex, simple, compound, complex, compound, let's say. So I gave them a different color and they are going for it. So now that paper, hopefully, is going to be way better than the first paper they gave me based on that. Probably I could use that paper again to have them write a second page because the paper was 1 page long. So probably I could help. And again, I could recycle. You don't have to design new tasks. They could be experts in one topic or they can do a lot of the same thing, but you can give it a different focus. And at the end of the semester, after 2 months or 1 month of class, they are going to have a really good paper that they can use based on all the feedback that you gave them. That is one task. But there are, many examples. My recommendation in any case is that you give them a lot of resources for them to get a hold of. So one thing, for example, that we all usually take for granted is that they don't use dictionaries. They prefer to go to Google Translator. So just to let them know why Google Translator is not a good idea, and show them, send them links of good dictionaries that they can use and how to use them, that is a great thing that we can do in these times also. For them to give them some more autonomy, and they can work, because sometimes they don't have, sometimes they just don't know better. They haven't done it differently before, so why would they do it differently if it had worked for them, they think. But now we can show them why it's not a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. Questions are not, I'm sorry, Diego, go ahead, please.
I just want to invite you, Erika. She's also a professor in our master's program, and she's a very passionate teacher. You have ideas also, I'm sure you have great ideas to share, or anybody in the audience, if they want to add to the conversation. Unfortunately, this app that we're using, you are not able to see each other's comments or opinions. Only we can see your questions. But if you have something that you want to share, you can text us or send the comment, and then maybe Erika can read aloud or something. So that way we can all build community, and that way we can all learn together, because we're not pretending here that we know all of the answers, right? Like you guys, people that are watching us right now, you have lots of ideas as well, and they are as valuable as ours. I just want to share one simple idea, and it's something I've said before, and I will keep saying it, and it's this idea of mastering approach to learning, which means that this is more formative assessment. And so like if I have an exam that is multiple choice, I have 10 questions. So I send that to my students, and then they take it the first time. And maybe the first time they get 50% right, but then they take it a second time, and they can take it as many times as they want until they reach 100%, or until they reach a percentage that they're happy with. And so in that way, assessment is assessment, but it's not really assessment, because it is more like a tool to help them learn and to become more autonomous and to help. But it wouldn't be reliable, right? I mean, necessarily. I don't know what Dr. Rodrigo would think about it. But it is like a fake assessment or a fake test. But it would be really appropriate to do it right now, just because we cannot really supervise students, and it's a way to motivate them to like, oh, you got it wrong. Okay, do it again. You can get 100%. So it is all about learning, and that's where I specialize in. I specialize in learning, in technology, in design, not in assessment. This is Rodrigo's area.
We have, well, there's something there that Diego asked. I don't know if perhaps that question could be combined with, we have several questions from the audience, and we have 8 minutes left. So one of the questions is, any recommended free and digital resources for assessment?
I'll take Google. I love Google Forms and Google everything. What do you think, Rodrigo?
Again, the problem when we focus on the tool, on the instrument, is that we have to accommodate to it. So I think a more relevant question is what type of assessment I am planning to do, and then once I have them, I can go ahead with it. I always have my students, sometimes they are kind of disappointed at me when I don't use Kahoot, if you know that tool, Kahoot, Kahoot. So, but that works great for diagnostic assessment, not for performance assessment, because then we have there like a ranking, and whoever answers the fastest. So it's fun and everything, but I don't think it's a good idea for you to do a performance assessment using Kahoot, for example. I think one thing that could work for you to get information from your students is, as I told you today, as I did today also in diagnostic with Mentimeter. That's the tool that I used at the beginning of this class, mentimeter.com. That is a good idea, but I think that depending on the task that you want to do, I think you want to rely on tools like YouTube. You can work. One of my ideas, especially for school, is to go to WebQuest. Have you? I don't know if you have heard that term, WebQuest. 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 So that is a good idea, and there are pages that have a ton of freely available WebQuest, which you can download and modify according to what you want. The good thing about WebQuest is that you give the students all the information they need, but they are going to complete the task on their own. And again, you can put them in teams. Let's say that you want to talk about the history of, I don't know, of the telephones. And you give all the students the same information, but each student is going to approach it from a different side. Some students gonna focus in how society was affected by telephones. Another student is gonna focus in the technological advances that were required for the telephones to exist, for smartphones. Somebody's gonna focus in the importance that they have in today's world. Somebody's gonna focus in the difference between a computer and a smartphone. I don't know. So each student, again, go back to the principle of personalizing the task, and this can be delivered in any mean that you want. You could use clickers, Kahoot, but at the end of the day, whatever platform you have is gonna be as relevant, because best case scenarios, you're going to have tools that help you to get a single multiple choice item. And again, I told you at the beginning of this talk that I don't believe this is the way to go now. About what Diego said about mastering the concept, that is a good idea before they do the task. In my opinion, I have my students carry out master assessments until they get it perfect, and that 100% of as many times as they want is gonna give them access to the task. So if you don't know this, you don't have this concept super clear, you cannot even take the evaluation, because then you're gonna fail. So I want you to pass. So I prefer you to repeat this as many as you need to, and then you're gonna have access to the task.
Just two ideas quickly. I just really cannot say much because I'm not an expert in assessment again. But I love the Menti tool that you use, Rodrigo. I didn't know about it. I've used. There are many. One of them is Poll Everywhere. POLL. Poll Everywhere is pretty much the same, and you can do all sorts of things. But what I'm gonna say as an expert in technology is less is more. Like I feel like right now everybody's like tools, this, and like, like sometimes technology can be good, but it can be a problem too. And you can have great assessment, great classes, great whatever, going back to the basics with TV, radio, WhatsApp, like there are different ways. And of course we have to be very, like knowledgeable and look at our context, like, because do our students even have access to these tools? Do they have fast connections? Do they have, what it needs? So like that's just my recommendation. Like less is more.
Yeah, I will agree with you both on two things you've said. Diego, less is more in terms of technology, because with technology you never know, right? Sometimes you want to get really fancy, but then getting fancy is not the point, right? It's what we can actually do with students learning. And as for what Rodrigo mentioned, I guess that technology is basically at the service of what your objectives are. So depending very much on what you aim in a lesson is, then you should choose technology accordingly. We have one more question, and it is, how do you deal with academic integrity in writing tests?
Scandalo.
Oh.
This is a difficult question.
I think the most important thing here, and I would dare to change the question. Sometimes when the answer is really hard, maybe we can think about changing the question. And the thing here is, are we designing for cheating? Are we designing an assessment for cheating? So the best way to approach this, in my opinion, is to start in the design to account that students are going to get help, for example. but you have to make it in such a way that they actually have to work their way to get a response in it. So you cannot intervene. There are things that you cannot control. Again, I told you, in the classroom, we could control so many things. Outside, we cannot. So the best thing that you can do to academic integrity is to include cheating or unethical conduct within the task and try to make it as engaging as you can so students complete it. So don't try to make something super, super duper difficult. Just try to go to the level of the students so they can complete it themselves. Because if they cannot complete it, they will find a way to complete it, ethical or non-ethical. So my biggest recommendation in this regard is do not design for cheating. That is why from the beginning of this talk, I ruled out exams or questions that have a single answer. That is designing for cheating in this case, in this scenario. Obviously in the classroom, it's a great idea, but in this concept, in this context, it is not. So I cannot control, neither you can, the person who answered the question, can control cheating or the ethical background or the values that our students have, what they think is fair game and not. What you can control is how much help they are going to. So again, one of my recommendations is give them all the tools that they need to complete the task. Links, videos, recommended books or whatever, depending on the level, even if they're in primary school. You give them like the list of links where they can go to find information, but you have them read that information. You make sure that they read it and they complete the task. But if they ask for help from their mom or dad, I don't know. There are some people, but again, if they are talking about like, let's say your favorite ice cream, write a paragraph of why chocolate cookie is your favorite ice cream. Then it is very personal, and I'm sure that that gives you a level of engagement that they are going to want to complete the task instead of asking somebody else to write it. And again, we need to modify. I'm talking a lot about the design, and I'm not thinking how about the rubrics or how we assess it. But when we review the task, we have to account that it's better a flawed task that a student made than a perfect task that was made by someone else. So try to think about it.
Do I have time to add something else?
We have, yeah, you have 2 more minutes.
I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm done, like really fast. I agree with Rodrigo. I am really good at marketing, I think. Do you know that Purdue University, where Rodrigo's a graduate, they're like so wonderful at writing. And me, as a writer, I always go to OWL, Online Writing Lab at Purdue University. They have all sorts of things, models about APA, how to reference, how to quote, all of that. And so Rodrigo's a good guy to talk about writing too. And he had a project that, some students came here from Purdue to teach us and help us with writing. I would say, in addition to what Rodrigo said, one is talk to the students about academic integrity. Why that is important? What does it mean to paraphrase? What does it mean to quote? Why is it important? Because I don't have time. I know when my students are cheating. I know when it's not their work. I know when somebody else is helping them, and I don't have time for that. Like I don't want to read the Google translation of this as English teachers. As English teacher, we need to provide models for writing because writing is difficult. And so like if you say, I believe that blank because blank, therefore blank, then it makes it more manageable. That way they will have what they need to write it. One. Another one, we have to be realistic. Like when I write, and I am a writer, academic writer, as you guys are, I don't just write like crazy. I sit down with a dictionary. I sit down with like lots of tools because that's life. I always use a dictionary, and you need to teach your students how to use a dictionary, how to use like collocations, how to use prepositions, things like that. And as a technology expert, I will say I do know that we use things like Turnitin and other things, and these are like software. Some of them, I think there is paid software, and there is also free software that checks for plagiarism, and so you can run essays that way. And this is how we scare students. Like we just run plagiarism checks, and it will be like, oh, you found it in this website. Oh, you found it in that website. But this is also, I guess, the main thing is a cultural thing, and it is more like understanding why they need to write and why it is important. And it's just not just because we want them to do it. It is not busy work. There is a reason behind it.
I would add just to conclude the idea that a good idea for formative assessment, as somebody asked, if one student comes with something that they copied from internet for whatever reason, you can use that example for all the class to teach them how to quote information from internet. So again, you are being formative in that case. Obviously, you tell them this is the last time that I'm going to allow this because this is unethical, and then you give them the speech. But again, you teach it to all the class. You cannot reveal the student's name, obviously, but you can take the task and tell them, this is how easy it is for me to find when you copy things from the internet, and this is plagiarism. Now, how can you use this information correctly? You use this and you quote, and you take the information and you said, according to this person, or based whatever, whoever person pointed out, and this is great. This actually is going to make your argument stronger. So, take your enemy or the strength of your enemy, that is plagiarism, and use it in your favor. And that is formative assessment too.
Well, Rodrigo and Diego, thank you for those final remarks. Well, time is up, and I would like to thank the participants, all of you through YouTube, and for your participation. We've got some questions from you, and what we're going to do is we have your contact, so we're gonna try to make those answers available for you. Thank you so much, and also thank you to Gustavo Mier and Andrea del Rio for their very valuable tech support. And the invitation is for all of you to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, so we can share as a teaching community all these wonderful explorations and all these discussions. Thank you so much.
We have big surprises coming up, so please follow us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.